Welcome to Why I Quit, a show that interviews people quitting their 9-to-5 jobs in search of something different. Listen to inspiring conversations where we dive deep into the stories of why people quit their jobs. What were the hardest parts? Where are they now? And any advice for people following the same path. I am so excited to introduce this week's guest, Alex Bullington. Listen to his fascinating story as he discusses his journey of quitting his job, starting a company, getting acquired, and scaling multiple products over 100,000 users. Learn how these experiences led him to finding his passion and jumping back into the corporate world. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us today. It's good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see you as well, man.
To kind of get this kicked off, I really want to go back to what's your first job and what does that day-to-day look like?
In college, I actually started out as a marketing major and then switched around sophomore year because a couple of my close friends and we were looking at the different classes we were taking and sort of just fell in love with accounting, which is kind of funny because not many people fall in love with accounting. And obviously, I thought it was going to be something that I could build like a serious career in. And yeah, then when graduated, took some time off to get my CPA, which is required to go into public accounting. And then I was at this firm called, it was McGladrey at the time, and then they switched to RSM. There was like so many things going back where, I wanted to stay in Baltimore and do my own thing there. And a lot of my friends went to New York, going like big four firms. And that's probably a big regret is me not actually joining a big four. I thought my time at RSM was incredible. I met some super smart people, really good people, and the firm itself was great. But I guess I missed out on this ability to possibly work with some of my college buddies at some of these other firms. And I was there for about a year. And, I would have never thought that if I hadn't left public accounting, I would have never come to this role that I'm into today, which was obviously starting Arbit, but being in product marketing, which is crazy. At a certain point in public accounting, I was like, is this really what I want to be doing? And sort of came across this concept of starting Arbit with Greg, and had a lot, like so much conviction around it that I just like nothing else mattered. Like what was weird to me was that people were so, like my parents, friends, everyone was like, you can't quit your job. Like you can't move back home. Like, why is that? Like, are you okay? And for me, there was just so much passion and conviction around like wanting to do this thing that like nothing else, like it didn't seem weird to me.
Was it the fact that like the work that you were doing was not fulfilling or not what you're interested in that kind of like prompted this, or like what led to it?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, accounting it was my saving grace because it definitely helped in so many other areas in terms of starting a business. And so I think the work itself was not necessarily, accounting just wasn't where I was like meant to be. And I was sort of like, all right, if I'm going to do something, be really passionate about it, like wake up every day, like people work jobs and, it's one thing to, you're not always going to love your job, but I think if you were going like multiple weeks at a time, you're like, do I really want to be doing this? Like, could I see myself being here longer term? Then you should get out. You should do something else. And so I think for me, it was like, you can build a really good profession, a career out of this in this profession, but it wasn't for me. And I couldn't.
How quickly did you realize that?
I think I actually probably realized that in my summer internship, believe it or not, going into senior year. And then as it was starting, I was like, okay, is this it for you? Do you want to go down this path? And so many people do go down that path and they go on to become partners at accounting firms. And for me, that was never something that I entertained. And I don't think it was something that I wanted to really pursue.
What is that transition into, the point from when you're like, okay, this isn't for me, to like, what is going to be that moment when you're like, okay, now it's time to take the leap?
I did the CPA, graduated in May, did the CPA, and then started working in December. And I think by January, I had been on site at a couple of different client jobs. And I think immediately it was like, I don't know if this is for me. This is not a good fit, but let me continue to flesh it out. I'll get through busy season, see how that goes. I didn't have any ideas at the time. And I don't think it was until probably that summer, fast forward like 6-7 months, that Greg and I started talking about like, oh, what would be interesting? Like, what is a good idea? Like, what is something that we really enjoy? And to be fair, we flirted maybe with a couple of other like just downright shitty ideas, and and then eventually just settled on, this thing that became Arbit, which I can go into more detail about, but it originally was called This That, and then we were trying to see if we could like build something around it, find people who could build it, even raise money, how much it was going to cost to go down this path. And I think that's when as things started to go into motion, we were doing a lot of work off to the side before we got to the point where like, okay, like, do we just go all in? Like, do we just leave our jobs and make this happen?
As you are thinking about leaving your job, are you, terrified of like how you're going to, survive on your savings, dealing with health insurance, like all of these things? Or are you just so excited about this idea that it didn't matter and you were just going to, see where it took you?
To be honest, I was so excited about diving into something that I really wanted to pursue and that I thought I could bring to the world. And that was the only thing that was at the forefront of my mind. So many people brought up, outside of like salary and everything, everyone brought up like, oh my God, you're not on health insurance. And it's funny, now I take that very seriously, but back then it wasn't even a thought for me. I was like, I'm healthy, I'm fine. Like I've hurt my ankle, like it's okay, I'll put some ice on it. And I guess it's one of those things you become like distorted in a way, but all I wanted to do was just pursue this thing. And moving back home with my parents, and then sort of explaining that to friends and family, that was probably the weirdest part. It's like, I'm just doing this thing. And then I was just basically saying like, trust that I'm going to figure it out on my own. And Greg and I were going to figure it out.
Do you think you had support from friends and family?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, my family was super supportive. I mean, they probably all thought it was really fucking weird. And like, is Alex okay? And that's fine. I accepted that for sure. But my friend group was so supportive. And I had friends that they gave us money to try like little bits to basically say like, here you go, here's meals for the week. And just every time we would get a little bit further along, everyone was sort of celebrating what we were doing. And the biggest stigma, I think, was friends and family, but was happy to see how supportive everyone was, even if they thought it was just so freaking bizarre.
Something I think about, like I see your trajectory very similar to like Phil and I at Loophole. Of both our initial ideas did not necessarily work out, but they both pivoted and led to something, that went from there. And I think something that is like really tough for people to think about is like when's the time that I should actually like quit my job and like go for it and devote all my time to it? Because I think like, thinking about Arbit, if you weren't full-time all in with it, you probably wouldn't have gotten to the point where you were acqui-hired, you wouldn't have gotten to Ceros, and you wouldn't be in your job where you are today. And so, what's kind of your advice to people who are like thinking about it? It's like, how long to stay on the side versus jumping all in? I think that's always, kind of a debate that you hear a lot.
I think you can de-risk it to a point where you say, I've got a certain amount of savings. I can give myself a timeline. I'm covered with rent or whatever necessities you have in life. But there's really no perfect time to dive in. You just, wherever you feel like you're at with your idea, product, business, and you need to take a monumental step forward, an order of magnitude forward, you have to dive in. I find it so difficult to try to do both a full-time job and working on something, especially if it means that much to you. I mean, it has to become an obsession, which it did.
I think a lot of people say that they can work nights and weekends, and after like a, 40, 50, 60 hour, like full-time week. But like, from my experience of what I've seen, people end up putting in 5 to 10 hours a week. And it's like very rare that I see someone that actually puts in the necessary time to be able to, see where it goes.
Dave, that's a good point, because I've talked to a lot of people over the last 4 or 5 years. People have been like, hey, just would love to learn more about your experience and what went down. And I'd ask them, okay, so how are things going for you? And like, well, it's going well, just dedicating some time on the weekend, but still working my full-time job. You sort of check back in with those people at a point in time, and it's like, oh yeah, like it never really got anywhere, or like we didn't have enough opportunities for funding, or there's sort of like a lot of things that get thrown out. But at the end of the day, I think it's just, you didn't go all in. Like you have to really make the jump.
If you always have your salary and job stability to lean on, then it's like it's easy to make excuses for like why the business didn't work or why you can't get customers or why you can't get sales, right? And I think like, quitting is not for everyone, but at the same time too, like if you have enough fallback options, you don't have to pivot, right? You don't have to do whatever it takes to make it work. And so I think like that's definitely like a piece of advice we try to give people all the time. It's like, hey, like if you are serious about this, kind of figure out how much money you need to be able to live off savings and like go in and make it work. Because I think like where people get into trouble is they spend time and money building something out, but they're never going to follow through with the actual, things that are necessary to actually grow a business.
Yeah, I agree with you.
As you start Arbit, you are growing an app, you're getting significant user growth. Walk me through your mindset at the time. You are gung-ho as you like first dive in. It is, all encompassing. You have a lot of conviction. Where are you with, 6 months, a year in when, you have no salary, you have like, the ups and downs of like running a startup, like where's your head at?
Yeah, Greg and I, we went all in, and we had put probably what ended up being about like 20 to 25K just our own money into making this work. And we tried working with a couple of firms in the Baltimore area. It was down just pretty damn expensive for not having a fully fleshed out business plan, but just, hey, we want to get something off the ground here, and we'll just go find an outsourced developer. So we connected with a really, really impressive guy in Uruguay, who then connected us with some more people down there and sort of had this team building out the app at the time. And again, the whole concept was Greg and I, we were so obsessed with both data and how we could connect people with brands, and just doing it in a really fun, interactive, polling way, and making it both photo-based and video-based, and sort of combining Twitter polling with Instagram. And we just became so obsessed with the idea that there was nothing else out there. It was super naive as well, right? It's like, oh yeah, Instagram could copy this tomorrow if they wanted to, or Twitter could, but just no one was doing it right. So we just wanted to get so focused on that. To answer your question, we got to this point where we're like, okay, if we could get an MVP out there where we had some beta users, and we could maybe get some interest from some outside brands like a Nike, or even just like one or two big time names, that's where we could start. Like we could raise some money, we could build out the product more. And I think a couple of things happened. We started pitching to some local VCs, and people were just like, this is a shit idea. Like there's no way you're going to make this work. Like they just zero chance. Polling, like you're going to compete against Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just not good. And we're like, well, these guys are idiots, obviously. Like, no, there's something here. Yeah, I wish we had done some more research up front before getting to the pivots that we made. But I think we then were like, okay, let's just keep pitching. We'll get this out in front of enough people that maybe we'll find some connections. And we were pitching this one guy who was like, hey, polling, connecting brands like athletes and consumers, like you should go talk to this guy, Steve Blake, who was an NBA player. And he was our very first investor. And he introduced us to another NBA guy. So they were sort of all in. And at that point, it's okay, we got funding from these guys. We need to get into like an accelerator. And that's sort of what brought us to Accelerate Baltimore. And that's how we met you. Yeah.
Now you have investors that are, NBA players, you're an Accelerate program, you've broken 100,000 users, this thing is growing, right? And so talk me through a bit of the pivot to where you start working on other things, and then kind of going into the acqui-hire with Ceros as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like you said, we scaled up really, really well. Greg had this idea of basically taking, like, we would create these polls for people, which dress should Taylor Swift wear before this concert, or which shoe should Nike unveil next. And you basically put these polls, take a screenshot, put it on Instagram. We would pay these aggregator accounts that had like hundreds of thousands of followers, and basically they would put up that poll, because you couldn't do anything like that on Instagram, and just say, hey, go download Arbit to vote. And we just continue to siphon users, but it wasn't sticky enough. People would come on for about like a week or 2 weeks. I remember myself, you, and Phil, we were looking at our retention inside Mixpanel and realizing, like, my gosh, like even like one day was insane. Like you had like 90% one day retention, but like 1 week would be like 50%. And then week 2 was it was single digits. It was rough. And so we had a leaky bucket. It was pretty poor. And so like something is working here. Like people want to engage around polls, and they want to engage around different brands and connect with each other and share their opinions. And how can we do that in a really interactive way? And so we ended up pivoting and saying, like, let's bring these surveys to agencies and sort of like build a survey platform. Because then at that point it was like, well, you've got Qualtrics at like the high end of the market. It's like super robust platform, big time companies are using them, but just not interactive or simple enough. And then you've got SurveyMonkey on the lower end that anybody can use. You can spin up a survey. It's really easy, but not really robust or interactive. So we're like, can we build something that's got powerful analytics, but can bring surveys to life through videos and images, and that's where we're like, okay, we want to raise some more money to kind of pivot into that space. Went through this round with TEDCO. We went through this follow-on funding with equity crowdfunding through microventures. So we're building out that platform more, and then started to build out a really decent consulting business doing the market research surveys, and sort of hopped into like a lot of competitive intelligence for a while. We were working with a lot of SaaS companies. So we became this like hybrid consulting company from this app. And it was going really well. We were generating substantial revenue. And Greg and I were like, oh, this is like a lifestyle business. Like this is good. But at the end of the day, we had investors to respond to. And that meant more to us than sort of just building out this comfortable business. And so we were, talking to this company, Ceros, that we got connected to a while back. And they were interested in what we were doing on the survey side, and if we could embed our interactive surveys into their interactive content creation platform. But what ultimately happened was, they ended up coming to us and said, well, we want you and Greg to work on this new product that we're launching. You have experience launching new products, bringing it to market. We think you'd be a good fit. And that's what we went through, is sort of like an acqui-hire where we got money back for our investors, but we ended up launching a completely new product inside of Ceros.
And that's what I think is like so fascinating, is that, you were able to, sell the company, get investors, their money back, and then while like still getting, hired to run almost your own startup within another company. But now it was a little bit different, right? It's not just you and Greg, it's a little bit more corporate. How was the transition when you went back? Like, I'm assuming you were super burnt out at the time from grinding for so long, and it was nice to have more stability, or what, what was that like?
It's a great question, because that was the entire journey. There was a period where it still sticks with me the most, that I'm sure founders probably go through this all the time. Greg and I, we were sort of closing out this Arbit acquisition, working on this new product, Markup, moving from Baltimore to New York. And this entire time, I was just so overwhelmed with so many things going on that I didn't know if this is like how all acquisitions worked. I was waiting for someone to just be like, hey, like, it's okay, like Arbit's done now, and like take 2 weeks to just relax, and then like come back to Ceros. And it's just we were just dealing with a shitstorm that entire time. And so you moved to New York, complete life change, life overhaul, finishing up projects that we owe to our clients on the Arbit side, on the market research and competitive intelligence front, while working on Markup and like launching this product that's this like baby at this 250 person company, and everyone's sort of counting on you to like bring this to life. And I would say from the first 6 months of that acquisition were some of the most just stressful times of my life. And then a pandemic hits, and then that's so that was just a crazy experience. And I wish there was sort of some sort of better way to go about it. There just isn't. You just have to dive in, I guess.
Now you are, launching Markup, and you and Greg, also have been super successful with launching that. That's also had over 100,000 users, if I'm not wrong, as well. What did you take from your experience with Arbit that you were able to utilize in Markup when, growing that product?
Yeah, I think it was just being really scrappy and doing things that people probably wouldn't feel is like normal to do. Like we're hounding people on LinkedIn to basically say like, hey, we've got this new product. We'd love you to test out beta. We'll even like pay you a couple bucks to hop on our beta and give us feedback, and hopping on calls with people to sort of see how they were going through the product, and then just constantly iterating on that. we did this like massive product hunt launch where I think people at Ceros always say, I mean, I was like a drill sergeant, like going around. We had 2 floors at this company, just making sure that everyone gave us an upvote, everyone shared it across LinkedIn, emailed their friends. We were pushing everywhere and doing anything possible to make sure that this could come to life. And I think people might find that to be overwhelming or weird and sort of like just a lot, but all we cared about was, again, having conviction around like this thing needs to come to life. Like let's do whatever it takes. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing we applied from Arbit.
It's really interesting hearing you say that, because I think so many times everyone thinks about how scalable something is, right? And then, everyone always focuses on like, oh, let's, do social ads because that's easy, right? You can, post up a social ad and like hope it gets somewhere. And I think like a lot of times what gets lost, like especially when just people are starting businesses in general, is that like I think everyone thinks virality is a thing, people, word of mouth is a thing, people are going to say it, but like a lot of that's forced, right? Of like, I'm sure I've asked you many times to leave reviews on different products and different things just to like get that baseline number of reviews, right? And a lot of times it's, out grassroots marketing, knocking on doors, like hounding people, like you were saying. And I think that is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but is like, you hear so much in the how I built this of the world of these people that are starting their businesses that are now billion-dollar businesses, and they were going door to door from their garage as they were trying to sell the initial prototypes.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as easy as just putting money to a really well curated Facebook or Instagram ad. There's so much more that has to happen, and yeah, you just got to get your hands dirty.
Going off on that, something that is definitely interesting with the rise of social media is like you have so many people just talking about starting their own businesses, right? Starting their own drop shipping companies, becoming influencers, online. And I think there's this false narrative out there that it's like super easy to start your own business and it's super easy to like make money. And I think like you've gone through the gamut of like starting multiple different businesses and products and like know how hard it is. So kind of like what's your experience and like a piece of advice you want to give people that are like thinking about like diving in and starting their own company?
Yeah, I would say it's not nearly as glamorous as what social media might portray. And I think maybe there's like half of a percent of people that sort of do have it easy, but maybe they figured out something that's really scalable and it's working for them in some sort of way. But I always think that it's going to come down to if you've got a lot of, I know I've used the word a lot, but if you've got a lot of conviction around something that you want to start and you're passionate about it, it's going to take a lot of hard work, but it's got to be something that you have a lot of persistence around. You cannot give up, and it's not easy. And things get so shitty before they ever get like even okay, and then they'll get shitty again. And I think persistence, and another jargony word that gets thrown around a lot, but I'll use it because I think it's true, is it's just authenticity. Just being authentic. Don't try to be someone for someone else that you're not. And I think a combination of those two things generally lead itself to good outcomes. If you're yourself and you work your ass off and you're persistent at something, good things will happen.
I think that's phenomenal advice. And I think a lot of it too is like also just being honest with yourself of like why you're doing it, right? When you were talking about, when you left the accounting firm, like you knew accounting wasn't for you, you had so much conviction of this idea and you wanted to make it work, right? It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about like, necessarily like being your own boss. And I think like too many times now, I hear people that talk about wanting to quit their jobs and they focus on like, oh, like I want to travel more.
Yeah.
I want to, like I am like burnout at work and all of these things. And like, it's definitely understandable. But at the same time too, if you're starting your own business from scratch, most likely you're going to travel less. You're going to have less vacation days and you're going to work more. Yeah. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I think, yeah. I mean, if you're dedicated to something, I think you can always find time to do whatever you want to do wherever you are. But I don't think there's necessarily like, hey, I'm going to do my own thing and I can just sort of go travel the world per se. You're doing your own thing to make something happen and provide value for people. And that's just not something that you can always do from a beach.
So now I know, you just recently started a new full-time job. Yep. And, talk to me a little bit about what you are excited about with this new opportunity. I know it's obviously different than your startup or, your last company of like running a product, but like, what is, what are you excited about for it?
Yeah, what's interesting is, first of all, the company is CB Insights, and my title is Product Marketing Manager. I started to get into part of what a product marketing manager does on the competitive intel front at Arbit. And I was so fascinated by it. It's like, how are we constantly getting a filter and a voice from our customers or lost prospects as to how can we better position ourselves? How can we win more? What do we need to do to make sure that our customers are getting the most out of our product? And so like the positioning side of things had always resonated with me. And then I sort of did more of the like launches and go-to-market side on Markup, Ceros' collaboration product. And I think a lot of people will probably look at entrepreneurs and maybe look at their track records. Oh, like this guy started something. And even if he got acquired, like maybe he was only there for a bit and then started something else or just kept starting things. And for me, I was at a point in my career where I was really, really tired after going through the Arbit days and then launching Markup. And I wanted to take a step back and say, like, what is it that I genuinely love doing out of all of this, right? Like that was why this whole thing started. That's what we started this conversation with is, what is it that I really, really enjoy doing? What have I discovered that I enjoy doing? That was product marketing. And it's all of this. It's sharing your customer story, bringing a product to life, working cross-functionally with teams to let them know that like, what is new with our product? Where are we going next? And sort of being that maybe a beacon or a North Star for a company and staying true to that is something that I've always enjoyed about product marketing. And I didn't even realize that this was something that I could do. And so I think I spent time working with a lot of product marketers. And then ultimately I had heard of CB Insights probably during the market research days and was always fascinated with their research, their CEO. And then as I was interviewing, met just a ton of really good people. And this is a place where I'm definitely really excited about growing a career. Continuing, we have so much to offer from a product perspective, and there's so much growth that's going to happen within our product that I'm really excited about where we can take this.
That's super exciting, and I think what is like really neat to hear is kind of the progression you took to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And I think so many times you hear that it's like someone's quitting their job and they're going to start a business and then they're going to start another business and like, but at the end of the day, it's, you were trying to find what you were passionate about, what you were interested in. And, you came across CB Insights and it's really cool to hear that story. I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun and just excited to get back into some level of normalcy. I feel like I haven't even had that for the last 6 years. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that keeps life better, more interesting.
Thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. We want to hear from you as we keep growing. Please reach out on whyiquit.co with any feedback or if you have any guests you think would be a good fit. Also, a special thanks to Chris Dole for the music. Check out his new album, Here's to You, on Spotify. Thank you, and we will be back next week with another episode.